Welcome students to our today's lecture. My name is Dr. Barasa, and we are still looking at introduction to computers. Today we are looking at the topic of development of computers, and let's get started. So in case of questions, you will be able to ask after the lecture, and also we have some review questions which we shall look at, and then you are supposed to be able to answer them after the lecture. So let's get started. I think we can start, then you will ask your questions later, and also don't forget to share with your colleagues, and also make references to whatever more improvements that you need to be made within the video and also the lecture content notes. So thank you. Let's proceed. Now, today we are looking at the history of computers, and that's why we called it development of computers. Now, within the history of computers, we say that before the 1900, most data processing was done manually using simple tools like stones and sticks to count and keep records. Even the calculators were not there, because the calculator is part of the computers. Around 2000 years ago, Asian merchants are the ones who came up with a special calculating tool called abacus that could be used to calculate large figures. As abacus is made up of a rectangular frame and a crossbar at the middle, mostly it was fitted with wires or strings running across from the frame to the crossbar sections. Then after this abacus, the first machine that is usually regarded as the forerunner of modern computers was now named the analytical engine, and was developed by an English mathematician called Charles Babbage. Now, in 1939, the professor of Harvard called Aiken, the name is Howard Aiken, who is a professor at Harvard University, is one who designed the first computer-like machine that was named Mark I. So since then, a series of advancements in electronics has occurred, and with each breakthrough, the computers based on the older form of electronics have been replaced by a new what is called now the generation of computers based on the newer form of electronics that arise. Now let's dive into deep discussion about it now. A computer generation, mostly you'll be asked that discuss or define the term computer generation. This means or is a grouped summary of the gradual developments in the computer technology. Historically, we say that events are not considered in terms of individual years, but are classified in terms of the durations or the periods of more than one or more than a year, right? Therefore, these generations were designed from one year to another. The first generation computers were designed in the year 1946 to 1956. That means that there was a duration of 1 year. And the first generation of computers mostly used what are called thousands of electronic gadgets called the vacuum tubes or the thermionic valves to store and process information. This was their source of like storage. So right now we have our computers or desktop computers that use hard disk drives. We have laptops which uses SSD. We have phones which uses internal memories and the ROM and RAMs, but now these ones, they were using what are called vacuum tubes or thermionic valves, and it looked like this as shown here. So this was the look of that vacuum tubes. Now, the first generation computers, we've said that it was designed in the 1946 to 1956. Now, what are some of the characteristics that we can talk about when it comes to the first generation computers? So the first generation computers consumed a lot of power and generated excessive heat during the processing. Due to overheating, these computers frequently now broke down and they were not very reliable. People are avoiding it because magnetic drum memories were used in these computers. Also, data entry was done using cards. So you are not using the keyboards or what, you are using the cards to enter data. The internal memory capacity was limited, and therefore the maximum size that it could save or be able to withstand was 2 kilobytes. The computers were very large in size, like they could fill some rooms and so on, and the very big spaces were required for them to be stored, and therefore often occupying several office blocks. So like it could be the entire block or even a lecture theater that you have that was made up of such. They were very slow and with speed measured in milliseconds instead of nanoseconds. Milliseconds. Nowadays we have picoseconds and so on, costing millions of dollars, and these computers were very expensive, you know. Yeah. Examples of first generation computers included what are called the ENIAC, EDVAC, UNIVAC, and IBM 650, and also the Leo. Now, let's look at the second generation computers. They were designed in the years 1957 to 1963. Computers utilized what are called transistors. You can see in relation to the first generation was using vacuum tubes or thermionic valves, but now the second one made some improvements. Now they were using transistors, which were smaller, at least more stable and reliable compared to the vacuum tubes. This is how they used to look like. That is the image of this of that transistors. Now, these computers consumed less power, and mostly they produce less heat, and they were faster and more reliable than the first generation computers. So at least people were purchasing them. Magnetic core memories were used in the second generation computers. The RAM memory size expanded to 32 from 2 kilobytes. Now it moved to 32 kilobytes. The operation speed increased from what we had 1 milliseconds to now what is called now the 2000 to 3000 instructions per second, and they were measured in microseconds, not milliseconds, as compared to the first generation. The second generation computers were smaller in size, at least. The other ones were very large in size, and they were occupying very big space. Now for these ones, the second generation was smaller in size and they occupied less space than the first generation computers. They were less expensive than the first generation computers. And examples of these second generation computers included what is called the NCR 541, the IBM 300, IBM 1401, IBM 7070, IBM 7094 series, CDC 6600, and mainframe computers. We also have Atlas Leo Mark III. The other one was Mark I, okay? That was the first one that was now designed. Now it moved now for Mark 1, Mark 2, Mark 3. Now we have the Univac 1107 and the Honeywell 200. So those were the main examples of the second generation computers. Now let's look at the third generation computers. They were designed in 1964 to 1979. The computers utilize what is called now integrated circuits, what are called the ICs. Most televisions and so on, normally they still use the ICs. The radios, they use ICs. Made of thousands of transistors and diodes. So we had both diodes, transistors, and combined together with the silicon chip, now formed what is called now the IC, the integrated circuits. The processing speed increased. To 5 million from 32 kilobytes, you remember, of the second generation, and 1 million milliseconds of the first generation. Instructions per second, which is now what we call the 5 MIPs per second. The storage capacity, RAM storage, expanded to 2 megabytes from 32 kilobytes of the second generation. The third generation computers were smaller in size compared to second generation. This is how the integrated circuit looks like. They used a wide range of peripheral devices. This computer supported multiple users simultaneously and had remote communication capabilities. And now, the magnetic disks were developed for storage purposes, and the first microcomputers was produced during this period of 1974. From the period of 1974 now to 1979, that's now when we head now to the development of now the microcomputers were made. Examples of these third generation computers included IBM 360, IBM 370, ICL 1900 series 8-bit microcomputers, and PDP-2 mainframe computers. Now let's look at the fourth generation computers that were designed in 1979 to 1989. You can see that everything was taking place within 1 year. Now the fourth generation computers utilize what are called large-scale integration circuits, which is now the LCI, the large-scale integrated and very large-scale integrated circuits, which is called now the VLSI, which packed more circuits and transistors into smaller spaces on a silicon chip, so at least to reduce the space being occupied. Now it looked like this in that diagram. These computers were small and very fast, at least compared to all those first, second, third, and third generations. With the processing speeds, it was reaching to 50 milliseconds. If you compare this and 50 milliseconds compared to what we had here as 5 millions only. Now you can see now the speed improved so fast here. They had large storage capacities expanding to several hundred megabytes, and then the memory technologies used included the disks, bubble memories, and optical disks. Examples of these were IBM 308, IBM 4300, Amdahl 580, Honeywell DPS 88, Barofs of 7700, as well as 16-bit and 32-bit microcomputers. The first microcomputer was the Apple III. Now, the fifth generation computers, which was now the latest, which was now designed in the 90s, that is now 1990 up to present. Some of them still exist. Fifth generation computers emerged in 1990s, continue to the present. They utilize parallel architectures, 3D circuit designs, now meaning that now their graphics were improved. Now you can now play something like a video or something graphically. And supercomputer or superconducting materials for exemption power and high processing speed. These computers are capable of parallel processing, and they had they have memory size ranging from 1 GB to 1 terabyte. You can see now even the current computers that we have and laptops still they lie into this generation. They employ or they use the VLSI and the microchip technologies, resulting in smaller microcomputers. These computers incorporated artificial intelligence instructions, that is the AI instruction sets for complex programs mimicking human intelligence. Now AI systems are the ones that are designed with the ability to mimic human behavior, and that's why we call them human intelligence. They possess some human intelligence. Things like these bulldozers, we design them using what are called hands, the hand design, the way your hand behaves. Now when you design a program, a microchip that now can be able to trigger some hardware components to behave that way, then that is an artificial intelligence, like robotic systems and so on. Examples included the IBM Watson, Deep Blue, Google's AlphaGo, and Tesla's autopilot, and the Amazon's Alexa's systems. Now let's look at now the summary of computer generations and examples. We've said that now in summary that the first generation computers used vacuum tubes and magnetic drums memories, consumed a lot of power, generated heat, and were unreliable. Examples includes those ones. Second generation, we say that they utilized transistors and magnetic core memories, improved the power efficiency, reliability, and the speed. Examples include the ones displayed here. The third generation employed the integrated circuits like the ICs and expanded memory sizes. They supported multiple users and remote communication and examples. So this summary is best for you during examinations. Continuation is the fourth generation computers. They utilize large scale integrated and very large scale integrated circuits. They were smaller, faster, and had larger. They had larger storage capacities. Examples are those ones. Fifth, we say that they are used parallel architectures, 3D circuit designs, and super conducting materials. They had high processing speed measured in nanoseconds and picoseconds. Pico is nano is 10 raised power 9, and then this other one is 10 raised power 12. Memory size ranged from gigabytes to terabytes, which is now what you always have. Today we have systems that go up to 1 TB. Now you have to note something, that this generation represented the evolutionary progression of computers in terms of companies and the design architecture, the hardware part that was used, the metallic components, the casing styles, and so on, the graphics ability, cameras, and so on. From the large and reliable machines of the first generation to the powerful and intelligent systems of the fifth generation, each generation introduced at least new technology with it, and also some new changes were made, advanced, and you could be able to see, leading to smaller sizes. Also in terms of the size, goes from a very big size to very small size. Increased speed, expanded memories, and also we heard that it enhanced capabilities in various fields. Now let's look at some review questions in terms of the topic of development of computers. Briefly describe the history of computers. So you can be able to tell us from the first generation to the fifth generation in terms of the characteristics and what was transferred in terms of the memory and so on. What do you mean by computer generations? So you need to be able to answer that. Describe the 5 generations of computers in terms of technology used and give an example of computer developed in each generation. Also, you should be able to compare computer memory sizes during the 5 computer generation. You can see from 1 kilobyte to 2 kilobytes, then to 32 kilobytes, then we move to 2 MBs, then we move to 50 and above, and so on. What was the most remarkable discovery during the second computer generation? You need to be able to answer that. Technology is the basis of computer classification. Based on this, then, now, having looked at it, explain briefly the difference between the first 3 computer generation, meaning that you have to look at the first 3, the first generation, second, and then the third. What is so peculiar in the fourth and the fifth generation of computers? You could see that the memory sizes increased. They were very fast, they were very small, they were very reliable. Could also feel like now in terms of work that they were doing, they could do a lot of work in terms of speed. Match the following generations of computers with the technology used to develop them. Now we have the first generation. In this section we are talking about the technology. Which one was it using? So the first generation computers used the thermionic valves or the vacuum tubes. Second generation used what are called transistors. Third generation used integrated circuits, and then the fourth generation used very large integrated circuit. So I've arranged them for you. Other more review questions are: give 4 characteristics of first generation computers. Write the following abbreviations in full: ENIAC, VLSI, and ENIAC sections. What is artificial intelligence? So we've said that is the ability of computer systems to mimic human behavior. That is artificial intelligence. Factors that determine the type of computer. We say about the type of processors. In terms of microcomputers use single chip microprocessors, while large computers utilize multiple high-speed components for advanced computational capacity. The second one is processing speed. You look at the clock speed of the computer determines its processing speed. Large computers process more instructions per second compared to smaller ones. Amount of memory that you need to know about different RAMs. Storage capacity of the hard disk. Sometimes we have hard disk of 1 GB. We have those ones of 250 GBs. We have those ones of 300. We go up to 500 GB, then 1 terabytes and above. Cost of the computer in terms of their prices, and the technology that was used is what helps you to determine these prices. The cost of computers is directly related to its size and capabilities. Microcomputers are generally less expensive than the larger computers. Also, the speed of output devices. Microcomputers have slower output speeds in terms of character per second being typed, while larger computers have faster speed. Lines or pages per minute. Number of users. Microcomputers could be able to accommodate very many users compared to other computers. We talk about that while larger computers can accommodate hundreds of users simultaneously, you can create as many users as possible within your own computer. Additional factors, we can talk about the purpose. Different types of computers are designed for different purposes. Some are just developed for gaming, scientific research, business tasks, and supercomputers. High processing powers. Some use high-end type of workstations, and therefore they require large processing power. Memory and storage requirements in terms of RAM, virtual memory, ROM, and so on. Mobility and portability. Laptops, tablets, and smartphones are easily mobile. Still, you can put them within your own pocket and then be able to move with them so freely. Some laptops nowadays, you can put them into a small bag and be able to move without having any challenges. We talk about specialized hardware or software requirements that were used. Certain industries or tasks require specific hardware or software support, such as graphic cards for graphic design or video editing. For example, the Mac companies or the Apple devices, they always require their own. If it's a software, you must have it from Apple Store or somewhere, which if you've not got from there, and mostly you purchase them, if you've not got from there, then they don't work. Also, if you install some Windows applications on Mac, so they don't work sometimes. And also, if you take the Mac ones to Windows, sometimes they don't, unless you know how to create some other layers that could be able to work with them. Budget. Financial constraints impact the choice of the computers. Scalability and expandability, also consideration for future growth and expansion, influences the selection. And then the user preferences. Different people prefer different type of computers in terms of comfort, in terms of familiarity with what is installed inside. Some people cannot use computers that use Mac OS or Linux or Unix, so they prefer maybe the one that are running Windows and so on. So that's what determines such. Review questions include like briefly explain the 5 factors that can be used to determine the type of computers. We've talked about them here. Discuss the significance of processing power and memory requirements in determining the type of computer for specific tasks. Provide examples to support your answers. Then explain how user preferences and purposes of the computer influences the choice of computer type. Mostly here I intend that you have to illustrate for me your answers with relevant examples for me to know that now you've understood the concepts well. Discuss the factors that should be considered when selecting computer based on mobility and portability, right? So those factors, we've talked about familiarity, preferences in terms of, you've also talked about how flexible is it, right? Then your preferences and tests, you know, familiarity, are you able to deal with it? Then portability, in terms of, is it smaller enough? Can it fit your bags or your pockets and so on? Now I've given some answers here. For the first question, I've said the type of processor, processing speed, amount of main memory, storage capacity of the hard disk. I've said about cost, and explanations are there. For the second question, discuss the significance of processing power and memory requirements to determine the type of computer for specific tasks. Provide examples. I've said processing power, high performance tasks such as simulations or scientific research require computers with powerful processors. Examples are like in weather forecasting, molecular modeling, artificial intelligence research. Memory requirements, you talk about intensive tasks such as video editing or visualization, like music development, demand computers with higher RAM and handle large data and run resource intensive applications. Examples are 3D rendering, virtual machine environments, database management systems. Explain how user preferences and the purpose of the computer influences the choice of computer type. Illustrate or your answers with relevant examples. So number 1, I've said about the user preferences. Individuals prefers for operating systems such as Windows, Mac OS, Linux, or form factors such as desktop, laptops, tablets, and so on. Now based on that, somebody can decide to buy it. Example is a graphic designer may prefer a Mac computer because Mac have very nice aesthetic UI and UX, which is the user interface design systems, and also the case scenarios. They are very nice for intuitive design of softwares and seamless integration with creative designs. Number 2 is purpose of the computer. That why do you want to use it? Is it for scientific research? Is it for personal computing? Is it for gaming? Is it for research? Is it for business tasks? Examples like a gaming enthusiastic guy would choose the high performance gaming computer with dedicated graphic cards and advanced cooling system because mostly they require a lot of graphics to have very nice pictures and a good look gaming experience. Question number 4, it was discussed the factors that should be considered when selecting a computer based on mobility, and explain the advantages and disadvantages of different types of computers in relation to mobility and portability. One is factors for mobility and portability. Here you look at the weight, the size, the battery life, and connectivity. Like this is also what you consider mostly when you're purchasing the phones, right? Yeah, the battery life, the size. Some want something like at least when you've touched it, at least it is sensitive, at least it cannot get lost so easily. Example, like business travelers may prioritize what are called lightweight laptops with large battery life because they travel a lot, and therefore they need to have a small bag. It can let it be able to fit into a small bag, and also can last for long, because if you are traveling for long and you want maybe to watch a movie as you travel, so you need something that can last long in terms of battery life. And also productivity on go. What are the advantages and disadvantages of this? You look at the laptops. Advantages are portability, battery powered, versatile for various tasks. Disadvantages, we say that they are relatively larger and heavier compared to tablets or smartphones. Tablets are also another one when you consider that. They are highly portable, touch interfaces, they have long battery life, suitable for content consumptions and casual tasks. Disadvantages, we can talk about limited processing power, software compatibility, we can talk about lack of physical keyboards. So that's why sometimes now if you have a tablet, sometimes you buy an external keyboard to attach to it for easy typing now. Also sometimes you also attach a stand so that it can behave like a laptop. Smartphones, you talk about advantages, which is ultimately portability, always connected, because once you have the data within your SIM card, you can be able to use it, diverse app ecosystem. Then disadvantages are small screen size, limited processing power for complex tasks. Consider these factors mostly to determine the most suitable computers based on your mobility and portability requirements. Thank you, and this makes the end of our lecture 5. And then this is Dr. Joel Barasa. As I said, you can as well as email me at info.emcihubtechltd or hubtechltd or ltd at gmail.com. Yeah, we are a company which offers corporate trainings, software development, IT and advanced trainings. We have IT consultancy and software development, companies data analytics and model dashboard designs, corporate trainings, and also on-call IT support, and also these corporate trainings. So give us a thumb or call us for more details we can be able to share. So thank you for your time, and let's meet in the next lecture. Thank you, and have a nice time.